Hi, everybody. I'm Jared Polis, and we're having a very important discussion today about family leave policies and how they affect all of us. Whether you have an ill parent, whether you're suffering from a chronic illness or a loved one is, or when you have the blessing of a new child in the family. Frankly, we need to do more to make sure that Americans aren't being forced to choose between their jobs and livelihood or caring for a family member. We'll also be joined by Congressman Rosa DeLauro from Connecticut, who will be joining us shortly here in our DC office, who's the primary author of the bill that I co-sponsor, the Family Act, which we'll be talking about as well, and she'll highlight, which will provide for additional paid leave for American families. One of the reasons we're talking about it this week is the original Family Medical Leave Act passed in 1993. It set the stage for protecting workers to make sure they couldn't be fired just because they need to leave to care for a family member like a new child or a sick parent. The Family and Medical Leave Act, which you'll hear during this call, some people will refer to as FMLA. That's what they're meaning. When they say FMLA, they mean the Family Medical Leave Act of 1993 that we're celebrating the 25th anniversary of this week. It gives workers unpaid job protection. For many families, that's not a real choice. For families that are only one paycheck from missing their rent payment or missing their mortgage payment, unpaid leave is hardly a choice that anyone can take. The good news is that several states have stepped up, and you're going to hear about some of the efforts in Colorado, which does not yet have any type of paid leave. But currently, California, New Jersey, Rhode Island, and New York all have laws that provide paid family medical leave. And their economies have thrived. Not only despite these laws, but probably in part because when it comes to retaining and attracting employees for a company, as somebody that used to run small businesses, I know how important these benefit packages are. Research shows, in fact, that providing paid family leave for employees boosts morale, increases the likelihood of employees returning to their jobs, and also helps close the gender pay gap, yet another important reason for passing the Family Act. And additionally, implementing paid family leave does not have to increase costs for businesses at all. In fact, it can help lead to more prosperity. But yet, despite all of that research that shows the expansion of paid family leave is positive, it's still left up to employers to offer it. And only 15% of the workforce today in our country has paid family leave through their employer, and less than 40% has medical leave, both of which are included in the Family Act, and we're going to talk about some of the state workers. In fact, 62% of workers and 64% of Colorado workers are not eligible to take paid leave, and many cannot afford to, so it's not a real choice. In addition, paid family leave policies tend to be more widely available for higher income households who can afford to take unpaid leave and leave millions of low-wage workers and hourly workers without any degree of financial security. When it comes down to it in our country, can you imagine being faced between a choice of having to choose your job or your family? Too many people are. And that's why I'm proud to co-sponsor the Family Act, which would provide all workers in our country, in all companies, regardless of whether it's several part-time jobs or a full-time job, proportionally, of course, up to 12 weeks of income while they leave to care for themselves or a family member. Not only does this continue the important protections of the Family and Medical Leave Act on its 25th anniversary, but it helps provide financial security to make it a meaningful option for families who simply cannot afford unpaid leave. Tonight, I'm excited to be joined by a distinguished panel of experts. And we have, by the way, I don't think this paper is right. Alana, who do we have? Well, I'll begin. We have Sherry Leach, the manager of the Boulder County Aging Authority. Could you raise your hand, Sherry? Just sort of wave. There she is. The Boulder County Area Agency on Aging Assistance. The Boulder County Area Agency on Aging. That's a mouthful, Sherry. You'll have to tell us what the acronym is for that one. My goodness. It is very important to help the oldest members of the Boulder County community in acquiring the support services they need. Alana, who are the other speakers? No, I don't think it's definitely not this one.
I'm sorry.
Okay, we also have, no, it's definitely not this one. He's not there.
There he is.
No, he's not.
Yes.
Okay, we also have, there's not all of these though. There's only 3 of them, which couldn't.
Not Judith.
Ah, there we go. Chris Garcia. Hi, Chris.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. Chris is with 9 to 5 Colorado, who we love, and that is a group that helps build a movement for economic justice by engaging directly affected women and families to improve their working conditions. She will talk about her powerful personal story because she suffered, like many others, from lack of family and medical leave. She's a strong advocate for family and medical leave insurance. And finally, Daniel Ramos. Daniel, how are you? Wave. Daniel is the executive director of One Colorado, the state's leading advocacy organization for equality for our lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer families. But more importantly, he also has extensive policy experience on this before, including a master's of public affairs from the University of Colorado, and has studied how family and medical leave affects all families. So we're going to begin with Sherry. I have to say, at some point, Congresswoman DeLauro will join me here, and we're going to cut to her when she does. But if we're going to go now to Sherry, and we'd love to hear your perspective on the aging side of things, how important it is that people are able to be with their aging parents during the palliative care process, and what that means for families. Sherry?
Thank you, Congressman, and thank you for including the Area Agency on Aging, as you said, a mouthful, in this presentation. So we typically say AAA, not the Auto Club, but AAA, the Area Agency on Aging. We are one of 16 AAAs in Colorado, founded and organized under the Older Americans Act, and we do serve older adults, family caregivers who take care of them, veterans, and also adults with disabilities. So our interest in the FEMLA, we call it Family Medical Leave Act, FMLA, really has a lot to do with supporting family caregivers. So in this country, we have 43.5 million family caregivers. And when we use that term, that refers to caregivers who are not being paid to give care. And they are so pivotal in the lives of older adults because about 80% of the older adults who receive help in the community receive it 100% from family caregivers, not from paid agencies or other providers. So the family caregivers are pivotal. And of course, many of them are in the workforce, and they have exactly what you referred to, that stress or pull between going to work and caring for their loved one. So the ability to have leave is wonderful. However, not everyone, as you mentioned, has attained that ability because of their employer or the number of hours they work or something like that. But we really do support the effort of FEMLA to help caregivers be able to take time to care for their loved ones, because it makes a huge difference on the caregivers or the older adult being able to stay in their home. If there's too much stress on the caregiver, then the older adult is more likely to end up in an institution. So kind of in a nutshell, that's one of our major interests in FEMLA.
Thank you so much, Sherry. And before I go to Chris Garcia, I want to encourage everybody to participate in this digital roundtable. You can type in your questions on Facebook or in the YouTube Hangout, wherever you are watching this. There's multiple platforms. We will see your questions, and we're going to get to those as soon as we get through our initial presentations. Chris Garcia, go ahead.
Hi, so my name is Chris Garcia. I'm with 9 to 5 Colorado, and I'm a community leader with 9 to 5 Colorado. I've been involved in the paid family leave struggle, or battle as we like to call it here in Colorado, for the last 4 years. And just fresh off my testimony this morning, you know, we brought it up before the state capitol again for the 4th time, and looking to make it a priority for myself. I know it's been my mission. Several times I've had to deal with personal issues and not had paid family leave. And this time I do have it. And as my mom is facing terminal cancer, I will be able to take that time and spend it with her and make those lasting memories that everybody should have, not just a select few, depending on what business or what company you're lucky to be employed by.
Chris, thank you for sharing your story, and I'm glad that you and Sherry will be around to answer some questions that are already coming in from our viewers. Daniel, we'd love to hear from you.
Great. Well, thank you, Congressman. Jared, it's great to see you again, as always. And again, thanks for the invitation to participate with this great panel of folks to talk specifically about family medical leave. Again, my name is Daniel Ramos. I'm the Executive Director of One Colorado. We're the state's leading advocacy group for LGBTQ Coloradans and their families. And I think for me, family medical leave is also a personal issue outside of the work that I do in advocating on behalf of LGBTQ Coloradans and their families. I grew up in rural Colorado, in Sterling, Northeast Colorado, and grew up in a working class family. My dad worked at the local beef plant. My mom worked at a grocery store, and paid family leave wasn't an option. And so I saw the day-to-day struggle for them to have to make that hard decision of whether or not they should go to work or care for their family. And so I was, in some cases, as I grew older, was in positions to be able to take care of my brother and sister. They're a little bit younger than me when my parents did need to go to work. And so that was my own personal experience with it. And I think that for LGBTQ Coloradans and LGBTQ Americans, there are even more challenges that folks face. One is that, for nearly over half the states in the United States, LGBTQ folks live in states without comprehensive non-discrimination protections in employment. And so needing to go and take care of your family can be a unique challenge when you're having to come out to your employer, maybe an employer who doesn't recognize you or who doesn't recognize your family or doesn't give you the legal recognition, living in a state that doesn't give you the legal recognition for protections from employment discrimination. The other piece is that we've done some local research here in Colorado, really understanding what the needs of LGBTQ Coloradans and the experiences. And what we know, especially for LGBTQ folks of color or transgender people, is that there are significant income gaps when it comes to having to make those hard decisions of whether or not you go to work or you're able to take care of your family. We also know that LGBTQ families of color also tend to, their income tends to support more than 3 folks in a household. And so when you're having to make that decision of whether or not you go to work, you take care of your family or even multiple people at the household, we know that there are unique challenges for LGBTQ folks. And so we're really excited to continue our participation in the Family Leave Coalition that, of course, is led by 9to5 and many of the other partners around the table to talk about the protections that employees need here in Colorado and across the country. So thanks again for the opportunity to participate.
Daniel, thank you so much. We're joined by Congresswoman Rosa DeLauro, a good friend and colleague of mine from Connecticut. She is the primary author of the Family Act, which I'm honored to be an original co-sponsor of. She wants to talk a little bit about what brought her to introduce this legislation and the importance nationally of offering this worker protection.
Thank you so much, Jared. What a great colleague you are. I'm delighted to be with you tonight. And I listened to you, Daniel, and to your constituents in Colorado. Thank you for your interest in what is a crucial legislation for working families. This is about working families, and so it's 25 years since it's the anniversary of Family and Medical Leave, and I feel very proprietary about this piece of legislation because I worked for Senator Chris Dodd. It was Senator Dodd who introduced the bill in 1986. It finally, after year after year after year, and it was obviously not paid because we couldn't get there to be paid at that time. But then finally in 1993, it became the law of the land. I'm just going to tell you a very quick couple personal stories. It was in 1986. I was a staff member for Senator Dodd. I was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. And I went to the senator and said, look, it's Tuesday. On Friday, I'm going to the hospital. And quite frankly, I don't know if I'm coming back. And I was a staff member. I had 3 kids, and we were getting them to school. And so we were concerned, my husband and I, about where the financial wherewithal would be if this was extended hospitalization, et cetera, for me. He said to me what I think everyone wants to hear, is that, Rosa, just go get yourself well. Your job is safe and secure. You'll continue to be your chief of staff, and we won't begin our campaign for 1986 for the Senate race without you. Well, you know, imagine this was music to our ears. We didn't have to worry about that. I had to deal with having ovarian cancer. I'll just tell you I'm cancer-free at the moment. Thank you. Thank you. But just this past year, last year, my mom got sick in August. I spent every day and every night until she took her last breath in September. all I can say is that I was able to take that time to be with her, and no one here asked me about when are you coming back, that we're going to throw you out of your job. That is what is so important. Yes, family and medical leave used over 200 million times, but 41% of the folks cannot take advantage of it because it is not paid. People can't take the time, and everyone has a sickness in their family, whether it's their own or whether it's their child's or whether it is an elderly parent or a family member. So what we need to do is we need to have legislation that keeps up with the way people are living in our society today. And men and women are in the workplace, and we've got to make sure that they have the wherewithal to be able to do that, which is why, to get to answer your question, which is why with the opportunity in 2013, I introduced the Family Act. We have 146 co-sponsors in the House. Senator Gillibrand introduced it in the Senate, working toward this. My own state of Connecticut, I understand Colorado, Jared is considering it. We are considering it at the state legislature there, and my hope is that we can pass it. But I think everyone agrees that we need to have federal legislation so that it's across the board. And the Family Act, by the way, applies to, it's up to 12 weeks, but it is a contribution from employers and employees. They share that. It winds up being about $1.25 a week for people to participate. It's social insurance. It is that you get paid up to 2/3 of what your salary was, and it is something I believe that we're looking at. Large businesses and people across the country are coming out in support of. Also to say is that for small business, what we have found is that when people are thinking about that, this is a way to retain people. People who have worked so hard for your business now feel that if they're in difficulty, you are going to help to support their efforts. And it has created a bond between business owners and their businesses. So we need to take up the Paid Family Leave Act. We need your help. We know that while you've got a lot of well-meaning people within the Congress, you have, it's the external pressure on this institution that gets things done. And you are that external pressure. So that we need to have a paid family leave that addresses the economic needs of our families today. And this is a way for us to be in defense of our families and stand up for them.
And before Congresswoman DeLauro leaves, we'll get to the roundtable. We have several questions for you already. I want to just ask one of her, and a few people have typed in something along these lines. Somebody asked, why is the current family and medical leave unpaid? And if it's unpaid, doesn't that mean that a lot of people don't really have a choice because they live rent, paycheck to paycheck?
Right. That you are absolutely right. I'll take the second part of your question first. That is precisely what is wrong. There are millions of people not taking advantage of the current unpaid family and medical leave because they can't afford it. They cannot do that. They have to bring home a paycheck, husband or wife, in this effort. So that's why we're moving to paid family leave. Why it is not paid at the moment, you have to go back in time. We are now, this issue has become a central part of our public discourse, where it's not a question of if, it's when and what it's going to look like. But when we were doing family and medical leave, unpaid, when it was first introduced by Senator Dodd, we went all over the state of Connecticut to persuade businesses that this was something that would be good for them. We knew at that time, while we wanted it to be paid, we couldn't get there. We would not have the votes for it. The environment has changed, times have changed, the advocacy around this has changed, which is why we need to seize the moment and move to paid family leave.
And I just have one more question. We've heard of some proposal from Ivanka Trump and Representative Rubio, and it seems like it's borrowing from Social Security. Can you explain why that isn't really what we're talking about here? Because people hear, that's Trump wants family leave. Could you maybe just talk about how that's something that's very different?
You are so right, Congressman Polis. I will tell you that any bill that says it's just for parental leave for the birth of a child leaves out 75% of the people who need family and medical leave. My family, me. I didn't talk about my granddaughter who was at risk 13 years ago. My mother. This is not for a birth, just for the birth of a child or for adoption. The other funding mechanism has got to be secure. Imagine trying to get people to tap into their Social Security benefits, which is what Senator Rubio is talking about. Ivanka Trump, look, I'm happy that people have joined the conversation, but we have a gold standard. Ivanka Trump's, her bill wants to take from the unemployment insurance fund. That is already at risk. And people who are talking about tax credits, the tax credits are going to go to those businesses who are already doing this, and they're going to get rewarded for it. So let's have the discussion. Let's talk about these issues, but we do have a gold standard. And you know, this just didn't come up overnight, the Family Act. It was about 2.5 years in trying to sort it out to make sure we were doing the right thing for business, for families. We were trying to make it, equalize it for employees and employers, and set it on a stable footing. So when you listen to others who have a proposal, listen very careful about who it covers, how it's funded, and where they intend, as I say in the funding, to take the money from.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman DeLauren, for joining us this evening.
Thank you for doing this. Thank you out there.
And we got to Lauren's question. I wanted to read from Cheryl. As a paralyzed person, I get no help. I was a stay-at-home mom, the hardest job. I work but earn nothing because of a very competitive field. From Beverly, Beverly says, thank you for what you do. I have a caregiver. I'm 37 and never realized I would need one. Sort of shows it can happen. Anything can happen to anybody. My caregiver is an amazing woman who I don't know what to do without. Chris, I wanted to go to you. If you could talk about how lack of paid family leave contributes to the gender wage gap in Colorado and across the country. Chris?
Yes, thank you, Congressman Paulus. I believe that it already puts us behind. When we're having to take that time off as primary caregivers and primary breadwinners, it's hard to rejoin the workforce once we've taken that time off. When we've seen that people that do have the paid time off, though, they're more likely to return not only to their jobs, but to the workforce a lot faster. So what ends up happening is that we're seeing that when people do not have access to paid time off, what ends up happening is they go into the system and they're having to rely on government assistance. So they're getting TANF and they're getting government assistance. And while that's great and it's there, you know, to be a stepping stone, nobody wants to stay in the system. And so it's almost like we're penalizing our families twice, you know, once because we're not giving that time for them to be there for their family, but then a second time because there's no way out. It's very difficult to get out of the system once you are in the system receiving that assistance.
Thank you, Chris. Christine says the birth of a baby is literally the worst time for a family to survive on one income for 12 weeks. Bravo to you for bringing this into the spotlight. Sherry, I want to go to you. Andrea and Susan said that they're from Boulder County Public Health, and they asked what specific steps can we take at the state level to continue to provide our support for this work? What is on the horizon for 2018, and how can we help you advocate more strategically as we move forward? Sherry, or if Daniel wants to address it, that's fine too.
Okay, this is Sherry. Thank you. At the state level, I think we need to change the legislation so that we cover more people. I think that is part of the problem and that's been referred to more than once. We have a lot of people that are part-time, hourly, or they just don't qualify to get even the leave. And then to add on the ability to get paid. I mean, it is huge, and it impacts, in my case, I'm interested in older adults because it impacts their caregivers. So they're in that awful situation. Do they keep working because they need to bring home the money, or do they need to take care of their parent? And so what we know is over a lifetime, an average informal or family unpaid caregiver will lose over $650,000. And that's partly through benefits such as Social Security and pension. They're not rising up the ladder, and they're actually losing over $560,000 in real wages. So then that puts on pressure as they become older adults. They're entering their older age with less resource to take care of themselves. And it's sort of like a self-perpetuating thing. So I think in terms of advocacy, to have more coverage and for sure to get the paid leave makes a huge amount of sense to me. I think that's the direction we need to go.
Thank you, Sherry. Mary Alice says, hi, Congressman. So glad you're trying to get things done. You're one of the good guys. Thank you, Mary Alice. Daniel, access to paid family leave is important regardless of what families look like. And we know how there's many different ways that families look in our state and in our country. What are some challenges that same-sex or single-parent households have when they try to take leave for a sick child or spouse?
Yeah, so one of the unique challenges for especially for same-sex couples or single folks is the legal recognition for children. We know that after the passage of, or after the win for marriage equality across the country, legally recognizing same-sex couples in every state across the country, we know that there have been attempts by our opponents to undo those protections in that legal recognition, but there's also been a number of efforts in many states across the country to challenge what legal parent recognition means for children. And so there are some cases in states like Texas where they're saying that same-sex couples shouldn't be allowed to legally adopt. And so if there is no legal recognition of the children, again, what a family looks like, or a family that would qualify, may be a significant challenge for same-sex couples or even single parents. I think the other unique challenge that a lot of folks face is, we sort of think about this idea of married today, fired tomorrow, where you can get married in all 50 states across the country, but in nearly 30 states, it's still illegal to be fired from your job for being lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender. And so, do you have the legal protections at work to protect your job, or is this just another way for your employer to get rid of you on the job for you to take that leave? And so if you are at risk for losing your job and living in a state that doesn't have those protections, that may be something that also impacts LGBTQ folks. The last thing that I'll add is, when you think of, the idea of the gender gap, the pay gap, when you think of that for same-sex women, for example, knowing that, women are typically paid about 77 cents to the dollar compared to men. And so that combined for a same-sex family of two women can have even harsher implications for families. And so knowing that that these issues, pay equity, that family medical leave, impact LGBTQ families in some really unique ways is another really important reason why we as a coalition partner of the Family Leave Act here in Colorado and across the country need to be really vocal about what it means for our families and our communities.
Thank you, Daniel. We have another question from Andrea. What's on the horizon for 2018? How can we help you advocate more strategically as we move forward? Who would like to handle that? Chris, do you want to talk about how somebody who is watching this could be an advocate?
Sure. So right now, as a matter of fact, I just got a text message. It did just pass out of the House. So the next step will be at the Senate. And what we can do is on Facebook, we have 9 to 5 Colorado.
By the way, I just want to be clear. You're talking about the State House.
Yes.
Not the
Correct.
Family Act
Correct.
that Representative DeLauro talked about. So
Correct.
We have not gotten a vote on that in the U.S. House that would do this nationally. I just wanted to be clear because
Yes.
it's the House. Go ahead.
Yes, in the Colorado House, I just got a text message that it just did pass along party line votes. So our next step is going to be the Colorado Senate. So reach out to your state representatives. Let them know that this is an important issue for you. If you look at 9to5.org, there is a link where it can take you to your state representatives, and you can let them know, hey, this is important not just for my family, but for all Coloradoan families.
Okay, we have a question from Robin who says, normal people get 6 weeks. Why do you special ones feel you need 12 all of a sudden? I was only allowed 6 when I had my son in Nevada and that was 7 years ago. Who has kind of a personal story they could share about why 6 weeks might not be enough?
So I can take that. So in Colorado, the reason that it is 12 weeks is because depending on the medical issue at hand, it could last longer than 6 weeks. So what we did here in Colorado was mirror the national model for FMLA, or Paid Family Medical Leave Act. So here, what we're looking to do is do the 12 weeks so that it mirrors a lot of the federal legislation that was already passed, securing your job and allowing you to take that time off. However, most people here in Colorado do not have access to paid time off. So when we were looking at structuring something, we wanted to mirror it closely to it. And so 12 weeks, speaking with doctors and other people that were in the process of writing this, 12 weeks looked like it would cover a lot of different medical issues that might arise.
And I would also point out on the baby front, there's many daycare providers that won't even accept a child younger than 8 weeks, which is 2 months. In addition, if anybody's had friends, and I certainly have, who've been through chemotherapy or have had cancer, it's more than just the 6 weeks. Nobody has to take that long. Remember, they are earning less money during this period, about a third less. But at least they have the option of doing that if they need to for the circumstance. We have a question, 2 questions. Where does funding come from for the Family Act? Is it a burden to business and taxpayers? And do you think business costs will increase and get passed along to consumers? With regard to the Family Act, it's very fair how it distributes the cost. It's basically half employer, half employee. So they each pay half of the cost of the family medical leave, which is put into a special fund and used to pay them 2/3 of their salary while they're using it. Does anybody want to address this argument, which we always hear with regard to whether business costs increase or somehow this gets passed along to consumers?
I think the only thing that I'd add, as a nonprofit employer, I think the cost of turnover is incredibly high. And so knowing the investment that we've made in bringing someone on, in giving them the content and skills that they need to do the job, so it's really important. And then here, whether we're at an organization like One Colorado or a business, that we are working together to accomplish similar goals. And so those investments that we've made in the cost of turnover, making sure that people feel connected to the work that they're doing, I think yields better employee results and also strengthens the relationship between them and the employer.
Thank you. And I would also add that a number of states have done this, and in no way, shape, or form is there any evidence that business costs are higher or that consumer prices are higher, whether it's Rhode Island or New York or New Jersey. There's obviously other factors at play in each state, but in no state is this a driving part of it, other than, again, it can help support an overall family-friendly business climate, which is so important for attracting people to work and to move into a state to work. I think it can help our state's competitiveness overall. Somebody asked if there's a policy difference between medical leave and family leave. We are wedding them together in this Family Act, just as they are wed together in the Family and Medical Leave Act that we're celebrating the 25th anniversary of now. Certainly, individual companies can deal with them differently, but what we're saying is if you have to take a leave to take care of an ill parent or an ill spouse, we would treat that the same as if you have kids. So medical leave has a different provisions under disability, for instance, or workman's comp, which may or may not apply. So there's certainly a different body of law around that. But if you want to take time off for a kid or for a loved one who's ill, we treat them the same under current law, the 25th anniversary of FMLA, as well as under this proposed law. Somebody asked, and I think, Chris, you're a good one to go to, what can workers and citizens do to get bills passed that protect family and medical leave?
So for myself, what I've found is reach out to your politicians, your local legislators. Let them know that this is an important issue for you. So what it's looked like for me, I've taken time off from my personal job to go down to the Capitol and testify and sit in front of these legislators that are making these decisions that impact all of us, and letting them know, hey, you're here to represent us. Do what's right for us, right for our families. Give us that time so that we can be there for our families when they need us the most.
Thank you. And I want to go to Sherry for one. Sherry, according to the Department of Labor, 2/3 of workers aren't even aware that they have Family and Medical Leave Act protections. How does an organization like yours help, or others, how can they educate people as well as employers to know about their existing protections? And if these new protections go in, how can we make sure that people know about their ability to help with an aging parent or a sick parent?
Oh, that's a great question, and I think it would make a lot of difference in it really getting used well. If I could just add a little bit about the 12 weeks first, I was thinking in the case of older adults, or you mentioned cancer, the ongoing chronic conditions, there's also an option to take that intermittently, and that really helps too, because over a period of time, it adds up, even a doctor's appointment, those kinds of things that you do to put into care. So the 12 weeks really goes by rather quickly when you're an involved person caring for a loved one. So thinking about how do we get the word out? I mean, I think that's really important for the people who already have it. And I was surprised to hear what a large percentage don't really even know about it. So in terms of an organization like ours, the Area Agency on Aging, I think one of the things that we would do right away, we haven't done what we should do, but I think we can do it now moving forward. We have a newsletter of over 2,000 subscriptions, family caregivers in Boulder County, that we let them know right away, because they're going to be people that it really applies to. And then other newsletters. We have options counselors. People call in for help when we're talking with people that their job is impacted because of their own health, or they're caregiving for someone and their job is impacted. I think it would be incumbent on us to say, hey, do you know about this benefit? And how do you get in touch with HR in your particular business and get enrolled in it? So I think we could really help spread the word at meetings, when we're meeting with people, lots of different ways.
Thank you so much for that. We have a question from Cheryl Ann, who asks, what money do I qualify for as a paralyzed woman who took off 20 years and don't qualify for any help unless I leave my partner? Why taking 20 years off work to raise my children disqualifies me from Social Security and all other programs? I've had to go back to work for this past year. So I think in this question, it's a different area than we're talking about. It has to do with disability under Social Security. Cheryl, if you'd like to call our Boulder office tomorrow and ask for Stuart Feiner, he'd be happy to answer that question. And I'll get the phone number for you. Yeah. The phone number of our Boulder office is 303-484-9596. And we'd be happy to look into this. Somebody else asked, how does this compare to other countries? I'd want to add that most Western industrialized countries have vastly superior paid family medical leave than we do, even more than our Family Act or the state equivalent that's being offered. In most cases, it's simply fully paid leave, and the amount of time varies from 8 weeks up to several months for workers. And it's very important, and those countries continue to compete and be productive. We're now going to go to closing statements. I know there's a few more questions, so sorry we didn't have time for all of them. We want to give all of our panelists a final minute, and then I'll conclude with some final thoughts. And we'll begin with you, Daniel.
Yeah, well, thanks again for the opportunity to speak about family leave and its impact, especially for LGBTQ Coloradans and their families. I think the other key piece to this is really just sharing your stories, whether you as an individual are impacted or know somebody who's impacted, or even work at a local business. I think that's the other piece, is really showing that there is widespread, broad support for this issue, and that this is really one of the ways that we can ensure that we have stronger families and stronger workplaces by making sure that we do in fact have family-friendly workplaces. So thanks again. There's a lot of work happening both at the state and the federal level, and appreciate all of the work that you all are doing to advance this issue. So appreciate it, and thanks again for being a part of it.
Thank you. And Chris, I want to give you your final word, but I also have a question that I thought you could help with. One of our readers, Heather, asks, I work with the Metro Public Health Early Childhood Partnership. Where is their opposition to the Colorado Family Act or the U.S. Family Act? And why are people opposed? And how do you respond to that? Is there some kind of conversations that we can have to be supportive? So I'm just wondering what your experience as an advocate, what have you said to those who for whatever reason have opposed this? And have you even encountered people who've opposed this?
So yeah, sure. So the biggest opposition is people saying that it's going to affect small businesses. And I find that kind of amusing. I myself was a small business owner before I got sick. And that was always my biggest thing. I was in the construction business, so it was with skilled workers. And let me tell you, being able to give those workers that time to be with their families, they appreciated it. They came back to me. It was one less person I was having to train and go through that training to replace them. And so when you take care of your workers, they're going to take care of you. They're going to be more productive. And like I said, it's good for our economy. I don't understand why people are so opposed to it when it's something that everybody else does in this world except for the United States and Papua New Guinea. So we're in a very short, small list of people that don't take care of their families. We put everybody else first.
Thank you so much, and Chris and Sherry. Do you want to give us some final thoughts?
So I'm with Chris. I don't understand why people don't support it either, but I think for closing, I would just like to say thank you for including the Area Agency on Aging, because it gives us a focus on older adults. And in this case, as I think about what I've talked about before, the family caregivers providing that care, it is just that sense of one less thing to worry about if you know that you're not going to lose your job while you're out caring. So that's that sense of relief. And I think it does pay back to the employers, because if people come back, they don't have to hire and retrain and all of those kinds of costs. It makes sense. And I think we help the caregivers, especially the people who are interrupting their careers to provide this, not enter old age themselves financially at a real disadvantage, because we know that that's going to make a difference. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, guys. I want to just briefly read a couple more questions, comments actually. Beverly said, shouldn't we contribute, say, $1 a day as an employee and the employer matches it, creating a bucket towards the time off goal? That's exactly the mechanism that the Family Act does at the state and federal level. So employee pays in, employer pays in, creating the fund that pays out the benefit of 2/3 of the salary. Bill asked, Jared, I would support this if businesses and individuals could choose to opt out. And I want to be clear, this is an option. Nobody has to take the full 12 weeks. Just as under today's Family and Medical Leave Act, it simply says the job will be there for you. It doesn't say you're forced to take 12 weeks off. What this would do is create the financial mechanism where you would get 2/3 of your salary during the time you were off. But again, there will absolutely be many people who might want to go to work 2 weeks after a child, 3 weeks after a child. They're absolutely able to do that. This is also different than any paid sick days or paid vacations that they've accumulated, which does not interfere with this at all. That's already exists. I want to thank our wonderful panelists and the hundreds of people who've joined us tonight. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule. Daniel and Sherry and Chris, we appreciated you helping to educate the residents of the 2nd Congressional District in Northern Colorado. And I want to thank our viewers for joining us. We will hope to respond online in written form to any additional questions you have after the end of this broadcast. I want to wish everybody a terrific evening.